Hi, everyone. This is part 2. Gene told a little bit about his near-death type of experience, really a spiritually transformative situation that happened to him. He is a clinical therapist, and today he's going to share a lot of stories, including meeting Raymond Moody before this near-death experience type of stories were even popular. Doctors used to say, and I'm sure Gene will share, doctor used to say, you need to go to the loony bin. What are you talking about? So Gene's going to share a lot of stories, including something to do with a recurring horse theme. He had 2 near-death-like experiences. I mean, I think it was people don't call it near-death, but I think he had a near-death experience. And here we go, Gene. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me back. You're awesome, girl. Yeah. Where do you want me to start with the?
You've had 2 near-death. I mean, yes. I think it's a near-death experience. So I think go right into that, and then I'll ask you some more questions.
Okay, I had 2 after a horrific accident at the railroad where I worked. I was 21 years old, and that was back in 1976. And I was sitting there looking at it. But yeah, my experience with the visions was I had one that was, I was laying in a hospital bed. I saw me there laying in traction. Then I'm standing on sand. It wasn't like it was a desert because it wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. You were just there, but you could see yourself in a bed in traction. But the next thing you know, you see it, you're riding a horse. It was a beautiful white horse. I wasn't in a patient gown or anything. I was dressed. It wasn't Levi's. It was more like a linen type. But the horse was just beautiful, but she wasn't running. It wasn't in a full gallop. It was just in a steady gait. And so you could see behind you that somebody was following you, and you could see them. That person was on a brown horse, and they were dressed in brown. And my mother kept shaking me and asking me, I was talking, and she broke it by saying, is a horse going up or down? She was referring to, am I going to heaven or hell? So that's the way I took it. And then, so that vision kept coming back and recurred so many times. I kept seeing it. You don't have, they just say it's drugs. A drug-induced coma vision, you don't have that many times, numerous times. It just don't repeat itself like that. And that was my thinking. And then when the night after my surgery, I threw 6 pulmonary embolists, and they hurt. And I asked God to kill me right then to stop the pain, and He never did. That all happened, and that's when I saw the other horse, the black horse that was running at night. Every time his foot would come down, gold sparks would come out. Beautiful black horse. I couldn't tell who was riding it because they were dressed in black also, and they didn't have it wasn't like a hood. I can't remember that, but the horse had a breastplate on it. I remember that, and it was and you saw the reins, and it had gold going up the reins toward the rider, and the breastplate that was there, and you could see the smoke, the breath coming off of this horse. And it kept getting closer and closer and closer. And then finally it just passed me by. And the preachers got a hold of that one and said, I saw the 4th horse of the apocalypse. I knew nothing about that. I wasn't religious and hadn't really read my Bible much, never paid attention to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse writing in the book of Revelation. And I saw that one I remember seeing 3 times. What happened was I got out of neurotrauma and put on 4E so my mother could be with me when I died, because they gave up on me. They found out, and the doctor found out that they were giving me medicines that didn't work together, and they almost killed me with the medications. He stopped everything and took it over, and he was a dear friend, and I miss him, but his name was Al Smith. And I think that guy birthed me, I think. But he told my mother that my constitution and the way I took everything is how I pulled myself out. What put me there was I was working on a place called Jack Spot at Johnston Car Yard at the Illinois Central Railroad. And if you've ever seen a train that as it pulls by, you'll see a boxcar and it has a big screw in the middle of the door. Well, what happened was somebody had cut the rail at the top where where it goes into the shoe, and it rolled past and the door fell. The screw was all the way out because we were fixing to put it back down and close the door and go out, but we didn't know it was cut. You couldn't see it. Well, the door fell on top of me, and my head was about 3 inches from that screw. My hard hat wound up over in the blacksmith shop. 4 guys that were around me that they didn't know their names, but they lifted that door up off of me and leaned it back up against the boxcar. This door weighed 1,540 pounds. And when I was in college, we went through physics and we was talking about it, and we figured it out. I was hit with over 1.5 tons of weight, which messed me up pretty bad. It broke my hips, broke my femur on my left side. I've got a rod down that leg now. So I've had that ever since. But that's when they put that rod in is when I had the pulmonary embolism. It's like for bone fragments floating around in your blood system, just fine particles. I didn't know anything about this. That's why I guess I studied respiratory therapy. But my grandmother was with me that night when I was begging God to kill me. Nothing was working. And then all of a sudden I was in nuclear med where they had that thing that they pull over you, and the guy was sitting there looking at it. Here you are looking. I go, what is that? He said, blood clots. And we counted 6 of them. So they started dissolving them through breathing treatments with acetylcysteine and other things. And they said, one go to your heart and kill you. One to go to your brain, you're a vegetable. But I coughed all 6 of them up. And I'm going, how did this happen? How do you cough up something that's in a bloodstream? It never made sense. And I was looking at it and I'm going, wow, this is crazy. Well, as I came on further in life, I worked at 35 years at the hospital. I went to school to be a respiratory therapist. And because to me, the therapist took so much good care of me that's where I knew my life was going to go. It was like you're guided to it. So I couldn't railroad anymore. So I went to school and I learned that I really loved helping people. And everybody's life you touch, positive or negative, you make an input on their lives. You've always heard this. And I wanted to be a positive influence on people and not a negative. So that's why I went to respiratory therapy school. And then after all that, while working in neurotrauma, you know the experiences that you had, and people would be coming out of comas the same way I did, and they'd be talking strange stuff. This is what Dr. Raymond Moody wrote about in his last book, Making Sense Out of Nonsense. This is where it comes from. And I would tell them, don't write off what they're saying. Pay attention to what they're saying. It might be babble right now to you, but it means something to them. They will remember it. And then I didn't even know of Dr. Raymond Moody back then, but I started after retirement. I started looking at it, and I was looking into how does this work, and so that's when I took the remote viewing course from Ed Dames, military remote viewing thing. And I said, there's more to it. So then I was introduced to some people up in Atlanta, John and Sherry Henderson. They own the inner space. So that's where I met Raymond Moody. That is the most interesting man, because I was taking Reiki classes up there under Andrea. And then once I had my attunement, after I was fixing to get up, I thought it was crazy and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, when she sat me up in the chair and did my attunement, I won't tell everybody what you felt, but everything, because if you go to it, you'll already know what to expect. So I don't want to ruin that for you. It's an experience that you need to have. But it was like everything I'd ever done, EKGs, EEGs, and assist with EMGs, everything came together. And it's like you already know that you're electrical body, because as you start figuring out, you already know every cell in your body carries like 0.070 millihertz of electricity. And you multiply that by billions of cells, you're a walking time bomb. You could run a factory or something, you put out that much electricity. That's where your aura comes from. And all of a sudden you start figuring out, wow, this is getting better. Then you finally get to the spiritual aspect, you're more than a human body. You are a spirit and a soul. And that's where they're having with nowadays, that they can take your consciousness. This is what it is. It's all one consciousness. Everything is connected. You figure this out. And when I was talking to Dr. Moody and I decided to become a hypnotherapist, I started doing things that just didn't make sense. Like, why would I take Reiki? Why would I look into this? Why would I go into hypnotherapy? Things I'd never heard about. But I followed the path and the people that I chose to follow. It just like I didn't say no. So I found that spiritual that works, and it's like you're guided, and it's no sidetrack or anything. Your feet are on a path, and you're going to follow it. Religious, not religious, however it is, there's one creator. We know that. Everybody wants to go to they want to understand the God spell. So that's what you're looking for. But when you have a client in the chair and you can change their life for the better and get rid of all the animosities, the hatred, and all this stuff, the anxieties, you name it, you can take it out with hypnotherapy. There is no doubt about it. But when you have that thing, now I'll go back to the day of my accident. You'll see what I'm talking about. When I found out that you can do what's called astral projection, lucid dreaming, this type of these things interested me. But yet I saw the accident. I saw the guys who lifted that door up off of me. I saw my body laying there. I put my hand on a boxcar and felt the cold steel. I smelt every smell around the railroad, and it's not nice. It's like burning grease all the time. And the whole thing is like, that you were there. Then you zoom over, and then I was taken down another timeline. I'd gotten tired of being laid off at the railroad because the day the accident happened, I had just gotten called back 3 days earlier. And I was having appendicitis attacks. And I told my mother I was going to the doctor after work. Well, I got off at 3, and the door fell on me at 2:00. And I wound up in the hospital. And what happened was, after all this, I went through a bunch of surgeries and a whole lot of blood transfusions and stuff like that. But yeah, you know. And then once you get to that point and you see it, I was taken down another timeline where I was going to join the Navy. And so I've been to the recruiter. Everything was going to be set. I was just going to walk in, work what I had to up till my recruitment date, and leave. Well, the door hit me, and that took the Navy out. But then I saw my life in the Navy. I was hoping to be in the underwater demolition. I was a certified scuba diver at the 10th grade in high school. I had a lot of hours recorded underwater. Even living inland, I was in lakes, and I went to the ocean when I could and go scuba diving down in Florida, and every chance I get. But it all comes down to it when I was there and I saw myself underwater. And when I blew up, I was working on something. I think I was into my military career like 2 years. And so I was shown that's not the way you're going to go. I was shown that I went on to respiratory therapy school. I worked there, and now I'm in hypnotherapy. I just never quit following. And I always wondered how I was guided to this. And then I do meditation. I meditate a lot, like twice a day. I do it for people. I do it for me. And then that gets you closer to the higher self.
Can you tell us how? Okay, that's a good, I would like to ask you, excuse me, to make sure people know how to reach you. How do you help people? What are the different things you help them with? Do you have a website, an email? How could people reach out to you? And don't forget, whoever's listening right now, please use the little description button. It's a little arrow if you didn't know. Most people do know. There's some hidden information down there. I'll get you in touch with Jean. For me too, that's how I met Jean, is through a 1-year program for hypnotherapy. And it's so many fascinating things. I think I had said before in part 1 of Jean's interview that even interesting things about relationships, why you struggle sometimes with your spouse or your parents or other people, just some fascinating things. But we help people with, mostly my focus is anxiety, doom, gloom, fear, those kind of things. And my email is growthfactor.org@gmail.com. and my channel to see more videos, including the doctor who saved my father's life from, that virus, and a lot of other people. So if you just click below, you'll see the other interviews. But Jean, how can people reach you and how do you help people? And I have some more questions about your story.
Yes, I'm in Covington, Georgia. My business is Inner Journey Therapeutics. My email is Gene@Inner Journey Therapeutics, and I've got a phone, but it's local, so I don't think anybody be calling long distance. The best way to get a hold of me is go to the contact page and contact me through my email.
How do you spell Gene? And tell me more about your website. Is it .com?
Yes, it's Gene, Gene, and it is a .com. I'm on Google My Business. You can find me there. You can find me about anywhere. I'm usually here. Ring the phone. I'd give out my cell phone, but that thing goes crazy anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get a cell phone strictly for my business, and I'll add that in later. But it's been an interesting journey, to tell you the truth. I was guided down this way. It never said, I was told it's not going to be easy, but you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And when you work with somebody with anxieties, helping people understand their relationships, the EMP prospect, teaching people tapping is something that is just really, EFT is really something to really look at. Dalton Church is about the best instructor outside of HMI that has it. And when you teach somebody tapping and they do this, I had a lady come in and I said, here, do it this way. And I went through the whole tapping thing. And she calls me back up and says, that stuff really does work. I said, yes, it does. I told her the history of it. I work with people, but the doctors refer me for A1C reduction, and you've learned how to explain sugar, diet, sugar. What are you eating? Sugar. Then you're going to learn about fructose. That's what puts your bolognas and all that stuff, your processed meats together, and it's high in it, very high. I always eat whole foods, whole grain bread. A simple thing of white bread and wheat bread. Well, I eat wheat bread. Well, that's fine. It turns to sugar as soon as it hits your stomach. I had a lady in and she didn't understand. She smoked a pack of cigarettes every day. I explained to her, and then when I got to the sugar part, after the 300 chemicals they have in cigarettes, I explained that to her, gave her the information, and started in. And when she found out that they put fructose, they have rotten fruit on top of it, it gives it that sweet taste, that sugar. When you take that inhale, that's not smoke, that's a sugar rush. And when they figured that out and you explain how to do it, it's really quite something. Then they leave really enlightened. And then I teach them meditation parts, how to calm down their anxieties, how to do the presses, everything that you do, to relieve anxiety, stresses, and relationship panics. I work with a couple that go through and they just don't know how to read each other. And so you teach them how to read each other. If she's an emotional, and he's a physical, hey, if you got two emotionals, you understand how to work with them. And you pull out everything, you just don't stop. And then their relationship gets better. I've done that. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, and I'll put all that in the description. I'll ask you more about that, what the different parts you can help people with, because I know there's close to 150 ways that hypnotherapy can help, and we could put that link in the description too with your website and how to reach you. I want to ask you a little more details. Is your death experience just with the train and the door falling on you? Did some other things happen? And do you remember anything else about a light or people visiting you? Anything else? And my second question would be, do you have other spiritual experiences such as coincidences, divine things that happen? Are there more stories you can tell? Because now people really crave hearing that.
Yes, back in the 90s, I'll tell you, this one it's strange, but it happened to me. I did commercial photography as a hobby, and we were to go, and I was photographing a place up by the Shiloh. Okay. And I'm standing there, this is like 91, 92, something like that. And here I am out there with a big 4x5 camera. We didn't have digital back then. And I was doing it and I hit the ground. It was witnessed, and my friend asked me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I wasn't hungry. It wasn't hot. I mean, it was like the energy just came out of me and I hit the ground." And I go, "That was weird. I didn't faint or anything. It was just like I ran out of energy and I just fell to the ground. That's all that happened." Well, here I am years later, and I'm talking to I went as a fluke, and then I found out about past life regression. Okay. I was talking to a psychic and I told him about this. His name is Bo Lawton. He's down here in Georgia. Met the guy, really likable fella. It took me a few minutes to wonder, is this true or not? Because I was still skeptical about the whole thing. He said, "That's where you died in your last life." I was put into, I agreed for a past life regression, and I did it. I was not in the Army. I was a black man. I had a wife and 2 children, and I was shot in the head by one of the soldiers getting water. I went through my death experience. I've had 10 past life regression, just for fun. You do this. I found out I was crucified in the Colosseum. They saw, you see the sword, you see everything going on. Astral projection. I was studying that. I learned it a little bit from the Robert Monroe Institute. I didn't go there, but I read some articles and I got a book on how to do it. This is what I found out. So here I am. I'm sitting there and I don't know anything. What am I going to do? Let's see if we can guide this thing. I wrote my uncle's name. I wrote the date and I wrote the time, and I had it in my hand. I went into my meditation. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, I am standing on board the Phoenix, looking at my uncle. Now, the Phoenix was a boat that was just down from the Arizona when the bombing of Pearl Harbor hit. You never could talk to my uncle about it and stuff like that. And I walked in the house, and my mother, who's still alive, she was sitting there, and she goes, "What'd you do last night?" I said, "You won't believe this. I saw Uncle Jerry." She goes, "Where were you?" I said, "On board the Phoenix." She said, "What did you see?" I said, "What was he doing?" I said, "Well, he had hair, more hair than he had before he passed away." And I said, "He was writing." I'd never heard these stories. And then all of a sudden she goes, "What was he writing?" I said, "I don't know. I wasn't just looking over his shoulder. I'm looking at him at like maybe 5-10 feet away, you know? I'm not looking over his shoulder." Come to find out, he was addressing Christmas cards that never got mailed. I never heard these stories, you know? And then I asked Mama, I said, "What was that all about?" And she said, "Well, that's what he was doing." And she said, "What else did you see?" I said, "Well, Mama, I've never watched a lot of war movies, you know?" And I said, "Mama, the whole bay was just full of bodies." And she said, "Uncle Jerry said you could walk across the bay on the bodies. You could hear the Japanese Zeros come in. You could see, you felt you were there, but you were seeing this and you're going, wow, this is fantastic. How do you do this?" And then when you finally get to where you understand what's going on and you can almost drive it, because that's what I learned from, I read about 3 books on astral projection before I finally got out of my body. That's what you feel. And is it imagination? We don't know. How is it? What is it? Where does it come from? And we know you don't think of anything. Every action starts with thought, you know? It's in the ether, it's around you. It's not, your brain don't really do anything. You learn that in hypnotherapy. It just sits there and takes in information and from your 5 senses and it distributes it all the way. What is this? What is that? And disregards what's not important. Because it just sits there waiting on to be told something from the outside source. And this is where it comes from. And once you figure that all out, you know that you're more than a physical being.
Could I ask you just the part to clarify? Are you about your uncle? You're saying he didn't speak much. It sounds like he was at Pearl Harbor, maybe. And
Yeah,
were you doing a past life regression, or was someone doing something? I didn't understand how you got there.
No, I was learning what was called astral projection. Okay, you do this in meditation. All right, so I wasn't even in hypnotherapy school at the time, and I was trying to learn different things. How do they come up with this? And yet you see it and you experience it for yourself. And a lot of people just think, well, you're crazy. No, you're not. My uncle was in Pearl Harbor. He never talked about it. We were told never ask about it. I mean, as kids. So you never did. And the times that me and my uncle were together, just me and him cooking or something like it never came up. We never talked about it. So we knew it's a sore spot. Just don't go there. It's because like one fellow I worked at the railroad with, he had shell shock. It's what we call PTSD now. And the only thing this guy could do is paint numbers on the side of a boxcar with a stencil. And that's all he could do. I mean, his nerves were just shattered. And so working with PTSD, you understand that because he came back from World War II. Really a nice guy. He raised bees and stuff like that. But that's all he could do because he was at the railroad when he got inducted into the Army and he came back to his job. And he wouldn't even talk about it. You knew not to because it would trigger his PTSD. We didn't even know it was shell shock at that time. So you see a lot in your career, and as long as I've lived, you see a lot and you remember a lot. Some of it is good, and a lot of it you don't want to miss. You know.
I want to ask you. So, my interpretation is, I think your uncle, you feel through astral projection, connecting with his trauma of Pearl Harbor, since it was December. I can't think of the date. 1941, December 4th.
8th. 8th or 6th.
He was in the middle of doing holiday cards when the attack happened, and you realize this. But did you ever get to talk about? Did he ever talk about the cards he was writing?
No, never did. He never mentioned anything about it. It would never come up. So, and then I knew I knew he was there. I knew the boat he was on. And that's about as far as I would go with it. But when you're standing there watching him write out Christmas cards and you hear the bomb go off and you hear him say, holy shit, grab a white hat, head out. I hope you can say that. But that's as far as it went. And the next thing you know, he's holding a fire hose on deck of a boat. You're standing there. You're not standing on the deck, but you're standing there watching him. And then the next thing you know, your attention's drawn to something else. And then you're off, but you come back. And then you start looking around and it's like, wow, did that really, when you wake up, when you come out, it's like, did I really see this? I mean, you doubt yourself. And then when you do others, you know that when you get the hang of it, of doing that, I do it sometimes. I kind of quit doing it because school got so hectic and I stayed more into that routine. But it is possible. And so when somebody comes up and say, I floated out of my body, you know, your family will think you're crazy. And in hypnotherapy, okay, tell me, where'd you go? What did you see? Where'd you go? How did this happen? You know, and they tell you. So they're doing it also because they've proven, they've got it to where they know that your consciousness floats outside of your body when you sleep. You've heard this before. And so you go with that. I can tell you more. And you know, your safe place when you go into hypnosis, you're given a safe place. You remember yours?
It's usually the beach.
No, mine's in a field. Okay. A field, cut grass, a beautiful shady tree. And it's nowhere I really think I've ever been, but I have seen that thing full of babies. I have seen it full of, butterflies. And you see this, and even under hypnosis, I've seen this, and I'm going, what is going on? And you question it. Finally, you just quit questioning it. It's like, just throw it up in the air and let it go, you know? And that's what you do. But people will look at you, if you talk about it, especially around here, they think you're nuts. So it's like when I had my experiences with the horses and stuff like that I saw at the hospital, I had to shut up or they'll put you in a rubber room. I mean, I was told this and I'm going, okay. So I didn't talk about it for many, many years but it's always there. You know, you'll always see it. But
your mother was open to it?
She was there when it was going on. My grandmother, who's passed away now, when Mama went home, when the horse that was riding in the black horse, when it came through, my grandmother was there when the pulmonary embolism started hitting me. And I was screaming and stuff like that. And then when you get to that point, the pain is so great, you pass out. I mean, that is how bad it was. I mean, it was gone. I mean, that's when I saw it. And I woke up and she said, "What's this about a horse?" I said, "Didn't you see it?" She goes, "Tell me about it." And I told her, and she was Episcopalian. And so she started saying, "You saw the fourth rider of the apocalypse," and stuff like that. Her minister came in, "You saw this." Same thing, same thing, same thing. Doctors, well, he's on drugs. We gave you all this medication. But I mean, the pain was so great, you pass out. And that's what happened. The nurse that had me, I wonder whatever happened to her. She took so much good care of me. And her and Mama got real close. And when I started working in respiratory therapy, I went to respiratory therapy school at the hospital I was in, the Methodist Hospital. And also, I worked in a neurotrauma that I was in. I even went in that room that I was in on 4 East a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Codes, you name it. I was in up and down that hallway a lot.
I think people are going to want to know, Gene, how did you heal? You were crushed. So maybe you could take us through how long were you in the hospital? How did you recover? You seem like you're healthy. How's your health today too?
Well, the doctors told me I'd walk on a cane because of the rod in my leg and stuff like that. One of them said I'd be in a wheelchair, and that didn't happen. But what I did was, it was like Dr. Smith said, my attitude was so up, you're not going to get me down. And I remember Dr. Scott, the orthopedic surgeon, was in seeing me. He said, "You should have died a bunch of times." And he said, "If you go by the books." I said, "Well, there's a problem there." He said, "Well, I never read your books." And that's exactly what I said to him. And he just shook his head and walked out. But I had 17 doctors. I remember that. And Dr. Osborne was when it hit, it crushed me and it burst my urinary bladder, which gave me peritonitis. They had to cut me open, take my stuff out, all my internals out, and wash them and put them back in. So I've been down that road before, but it's like, it never got me down. And then when I went to physical therapy, I had a young girl named Monica. And I remember her putting me on that tilt bed. They put a block under your good leg and let the other one dangle. And she had another patient in the physical therapy. It's a big room. And she said, "When you can't take the pain, just push the button and it'll quit going up." I said, "Okay." So she walked away and I threw the button away. I said, "I'll stand up." And she came back and she said, "Well, you made it all the way up." So I had no choice. She goes, "Well," I said, "after you walked away, I dropped the button." So that's the way I looked at it all the time. And I remember I was sitting at the window. I finally got in a wheelchair and my grandmother was sitting with me. We were out looking, and I said, "All I want to do is go outside and feel the wind. I haven't felt it in so long." But you have to go through the healing process. And so I did. And it hurt a lot. But the way I look at it, I was saved by not going into the military. If it took me not going into the military to put me in that condition, it did a good job. And everything has guided me straight down to what I'm doing now. And I won't ever give up. It's not the easiest thing I've ever done in the world, but I'll make it through. And I'll help other people make it through this, whatever's going on now. I see a lot of anxiety because of it. The suicide rate we know is out of the roof. And I don't like seeing that. And if I can help anybody, that's what I want to do. I mean, everybody goes, "You charge that much money?" I go, "Well, I got to pay the bills." And I said, "You're thinking about it wrong. It's energy. If you want my energy, I got to have something in return." And it's not about that. I worked on several people. I do pro bonos. My little fellow over in, I'll never give him up. So he's my Saturday night special, I think. But he means a lot to me. And that young man's going through it over New Zealand now. It's pretty bad. But I see when I walk out and I see all these people and they're living in such fear. And religious connotation or not, Jesus himself said, no fear, if you want to go down that road. But I'm not afraid of dying. I've almost been there before. I know I'm going somewhere else. Once I drop this 3D mud hut, get out of here, I'll find someplace else to go. But that's the way I view things. And nobody can get me down. I've heard all the connotations that what I'm doing is wrong. I don't care what you think. I'm doing what I was told to do. And that's all I know.
Beautiful, Gene. So I'm happy that if anyone wants to find you, they can do that. If you've had a spiritual experience, I'd love to interview you, or a near-death experience, anything spiritually transformational, you would just email me, growthfactor.org@gmail.com. And Gene's email, what is it again? Or you prefer your website? Could you say it again?
Oh, the website is innerjourneytherapeutics.com. And my email there is gene@innerjourneytherapeutics.com.
And it's GENE. I think we're almost done with the interview, unless there's anything else, a wild story you want to share or let people know. What I want people to know, the reason I do these interviews is it helped me for many years when I was struggling with life and wanting to know that this life is a world of tests. So stories like yours, Gene, are very helpful, that you saw this horse and one day it'll have meaning. It probably, there's some people listening, and please comment below, that probably are going to understand, or they've been through it, or they have some theory, but stories like yours really help people. And it's good to know people can reach out to you, whoever resonates with you, and they're going to feel that in their soul. And I appreciate you helping us. But if there's anything else you wanted to maybe give some words of encouragement, or some type of divine coincidence story, and anything at all that you want to say before we say goodbye.
Not really, just don't live in fear. And if you find yourself in an anxiety state, don't let it manifest into something you can't handle or don't want to handle. You need help. And I'm not saying go to a hypnotherapist, but that is the best alternative other than medicines, pills, and that type of thing. A hypnotherapist can help you far greater than swallowing a pill. Because I do know when I moved down here, my friends had a 14-year-old. She hung herself. And she was on medication for anxiety and depression. And guess what? It says on the bottle, may have suicidal thoughts. And right then, I saw the picture of this beautiful little girl that had taken her own life as something that could have been helped without medication or anything like that. And just to be able to help somebody that way so that they don't do it. And the way the world is now, it's getting worse. But I would say invest in yourself. Invest in a hypnotherapist, no matter where you are. You can get them online. I'm not promoting me. Every hypnotherapist out there is willing to help. And it's like you, Melissa. You have things that you specialize in. I have things that I do. But before you take yourself this in your own life, it will come to that. You will need a psychologist or a psychiatrist. But you know what? Maybe, just maybe, without going through all that, you can be fixed. And all you got to do is reach out, because we don't know who you are. You have to know who we are. And that's just simple. We're easy to find. I don't know. I have never met a hypnotherapist I didn't like. Let's put it that way. I love them all because what they're doing. And every one of us was led down this path. Every one of us. So that's about all I would say.
Well, I know everyone enjoyed you, Gene. Thank you for sharing some of your journey. And when you're ready for part 3, let me know so we can hear more about your life. Because I know, just put in the comments, whoever wants part 3, we can do that and learn more about Gene's story. And if you have a story, we all have a journey. We all have a story. We all have trials and tribulations. And it just seems to be sometimes every hour, sometimes every day, or every week. For me, it seems like every few hours, there's some new challenge. So you're not alone. That's the main message. You're not alone. We all have a story. I mean, look at Gene. He was crushed and he's here speaking with us. My goodness. So we all get crushed by life, don't we?
We
Gene just
do.
happened to be crushed by a door, but the rest
That
of
thing
us,
was heavy.
life.
It was. It made a loud noise. They told me, but when you see it, it's like, well, I'll tell you this: when you hear about it, it's one thing, but when you are there and you're looking at it, and they didn't know the 4 guys, I could name you the 4 guys that picked it up, and I never heard this, you know. But I'm looking at Barry and Clint and everybody. Gary was the other guy that was hurt. It broke his leg, and I saw him, and yeah, they even. It was just it's a trip I don't ever want to take again. But if it got me here, that's what I'm thankful for.
There's that phrase, don't let the door hit you on your way out. I guess
That's right.
Gene had that happen.
That's right. You can just always laugh about it, you know, and the trauma. I've learned how to deal with trauma, especially in the hypnotherapy classes. When we deal with trauma all the time, I was able to deal with mine even easier, even though I put it in the back of my mind. You know, well, that sucked, you know, keep on going. But when you see people, oh, Lord, the people I've seen that have had worse trauma than me, there's always somebody else, you know, that's had a little bit worse. I remember a man in physical therapy. He was a black man, really nice guy, had a 14-foot switch tie pick the back of his head up. The man could sit there and talk to you in physical therapy. He would get up to walk and pass out every time.
What does that mean? I don't understand about the switch tie. What happened?
A switch tie is real long, and it's where the railroad tracks run over, and they're real long. They're 14 feet. Okay, when you see a main track and a switch track come in,
oh yes,
it's that long. It's a railroad tie. They lay the track on top of it, and it lifted him up on the back of the head. And I told Mama, I got back to the room and I just told Mama, I said, when you think you've seen it all, you haven't. And I got to telling her about him, and he would never be right. He didn't have all the broke bones, but it just hit him so hard. So, you know, it is what it is. And it was strange because they put us together because we both we didn't work at the same railroad. He worked at L&N, I worked at Illinois Central. But the thing is, you were railroaders. You know, he was a Gandy dancer, I was a carman. The Gandy dancer is one that works on the tracks. I repaired boxcars. So that's what we did. But I still remember that man to this day, you know?
oh yeah, there's a lot of tough injuries out there, and you had one too, but look, you're here. Amazing.
Oh.
Well, thank you, Gene, so much. I hope everyone saw part 2. This is part 1, and just click down below for Growth Factor, this channel, and hope you enjoy more videos. Hope you're inspired and helps you get out of bed in the morning, because I know a lot of us are struggling these days. So I hope we're here to help you, even just by listening. And thanks everyone for being here. Thank you, Gene.
All right, Leslie. I like being around you, even if it's virtual.
Thanks, Gene. Thanks, everyone.